Welcome to a shorter edition of Ask and Ye Shall Receive Answers. I know I said I wasn't going to do these anymore, but I can't stay away from the camera. Actually, the idea here is to do kind of like shorter, more focused, maybe just like one or two, or just a few questions. I think we're just going to do one right now. It's just really quick. This is a question. I know it's been asked. It was asked before. It kind of slipped. It came back. So this is from Twisted Gamer. So Jesse wants to know, how come people complain when like Marvel and DC kill the characters? They kill characters and bring them back, but then they whine when characters like Richard Rider don't come back. So he thinks it's a little hypocritical. He brings up a very good point. And that's just the nature of comic book readers. And what it comes down to, me included, you cannot please everyone. There's always going to be something that's going to give people a reason to complain. As much as I'm enjoying comics, I complain a lot about continuity. And it's just a little nitpicky. And I realize that, I understand that. And I know we need to just focus on the stories. On the other hand, I also realize that when something happens, chances are it's going to revert back. Things are going to get better. For example, so the new Iron Man costume, it's got black and it's got yellow. Not really the traditional red and yellow armor that we're used to, that everyone that has seen the movies and the cartoons, it's not what they're used to. Chances are, we're going to see that red and gold costume. And for all I know, since I try to avoid spoilers and everything, for all I know, maybe there's a solicit already for issue 3 or 4 that shows the return of the regular costume. As far as comic book deaths go, whenever someone dies, we know, especially if it's a big character, if it's like when you get the death of Batman, death of Superman, death of even Human Torch, publishers aren't going to kill off these potential money makers. You can't kill these big, huge characters where they can potentially have another movie, cartoon series, toy line, whatever. It's like throwing money away. It's not going to happen. The idea, what we need to take away from comic book deaths, it's not that they're horrible. The death of Johnny Storm, that was a great story. I mean, it was very touching. We saw the aftermath. That's where the writers step up. It's real easy, well, I'm speaking on behalf of comic writers, it's real easy to write a death scene. You can kill off whoever. It's going to get shock value. People are going to talk about it. People are going to complain. People are going to rejoice, whatever. The key is making it a meaningful death. Making it so it doesn't feel like it's just a stunt, which, a lot of times, no matter how well written, it still feels like a stunt. But you need to write it well, and you need to get the reaction of everyone else. It needs to mean something. I think I've said that a bunch of times. So, for example, with the Fantastic Four, we got to see, because that book is such a family-driven title, we got to see the reactions of his sister, his brother-in-law, even his best friend, Ben the Thing. That's where the story comes in. That's where you can look at it saying, I'm not really happy that he's dead. We all know he's coming back, and he did come back. But it's seeing those stories, how it takes place. Seeing little Franklin Richard sad, and then Spider-Man coming up saying, yeah, I lost my uncle too. So, that's where the writers get a chance to tell stories that you can't really tell if characters live. Because also, it kind of makes sense that characters are going to die once in a while. They're not all invulnerable. They're not all immortal. You can't just have these characters taking on these insane odds, taking on all these bad guys, doing all these crazy things without the fear of death. That's where the indie books come in, because in independent books, creator-owned books, no one is safe. You got a character, take The Walking Dead, take, Invincible's coming up, it's supposed to be the death of everyone. We don't know who's going to die. I've always said in The Walking Dead, I would not be surprised if Robert Kirkman killed off Rick Grimes. That would be nuts. But it's something that he could do. Maybe not at this point, but it's something that can be done. You take a character like Spider-Man. They've killed him off successfully in the Ultimate Universe. As great as that story is going, as wonderful as the Miles Morales stories are, you can't help in the back of your mind wonder, Peter Parker's probably going to come back sometime. Even though death in the Ultimate Universe is a little different. They kill off Wolverine. He hasn't been back yet. But chances are, somewhere down the line, someone, it's not necessarily going to be a writer, it could be editorial saying, I think it's time to bring this person back. Now, as far as comic fans, the reason they complain about death and then the return of characters is because it happens so often. Marvel joked, I think it was in 2011, that they were going to kill off a character every quarter, and they pretty much did. That's when it becomes overused. It's one thing to tell a compelling story where a character is sacrificed or just dies, suffers a casualty. But when it happens and then they come back right away, it's not that big of a deal. Now, when you take a character like Nova, Richard Rider, he had a good death. It was a noble death. But was it really necessary? It didn't even make like the USA Today or whatever. It didn't make the news. That's where it's a bummer. And that's where you have to wonder is like, did he really have to die? Could the story have been different if he didn't die? Maybe he could have just been put in a coma. Maybe he could have just been, really injured and had to, rehabilitate himself. So it's not that comic fans are complaining about characters dying and coming back. What they don't like is that the deaths are used a lot, and the reason they whine, again, that's not my words, the reason they whine about when certain characters like Richard Rider are still dead is because that's a character they love, that they enjoy. Now, Jean Grey has the reputation of dying and coming back, even though she hasn't really died and came back that often. Got the Phoenix Force. Anyways, when a character dies and comes back many times, it's not a big deal. But if it's a character that it hasn't really happened, it's a character that people really feel attached to, then that's when they're going to complain about it. So it's not that they're being hypocritical saying, I don't want, if a character dies, it should stay dead. But it's what they're really saying is, I like Nova, I want him back. And on top of that, what they're saying is, don't use the comic book deaths. You don't have to use it all the time. There's other ways to tell good stories. That's what all this comes down to. It is important to have death. There should be the threat of a death, but it shouldn't be used as a stunt. And I'm actually fine without deaths happening in comics. Comics are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be an escape for people. We're supposed to be able to enjoy it. You don't want to read, even though it could be a great and touching story, you don't necessarily want to sit there and read about your favorite character being laid to rest. So that's what it comes down to. It's not that comic readers are hypocritical, although they can be, myself included. I'll throw myself in there. But it's just that we don't want these characters that we love to stay back. They can go away, but then bring them back in a really cool way. And hopefully we will see the return of Nova. So that is it for this week. Thank you for your questions. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a random question, do a little video rant, whatever you want to call it. This is going to take the place, because the rest of your questions will still go on new podcast, which is now called the Invincibly Supermassive Comic Book Podcast of Stuff. So you keep asking your questions at ReplyMe, G-Man from Heck on Twitter. Use the hashtag AskGman. Use the Ask G-Man video question thread in the forums. I will still answer your questions, and I will select the occasional one to answer here, so I can still talk to you guys, connect with you guys, and caress you a little. No, I'm not going to do that. So thank you for watching. We will have another one of these possibly next week. I'm not sure if this is what I'm going to be doing weekly on top of the podcast and everything else that I'm doing. So hopefully your favorite character has not died, is not dead, and will not die. And hopefully the video segments will not die.